The silence was Leo Thorne's oldest companion. It wasn't an empty silence, but a dense, textured thing, a world felt through vibrations, seen through fleeting expressions, and understood through the patient dance of sign language and typed words on screens. Born deaf to one of the world's most powerful billionaires, Alexander Thorne, Leo had inherited a universe of luxury but lived in a gilded cage of quiet. His father, a titan of biotechnology, had poured fortunes into solutions, but every specialist, every surgeon, had yielded the same result: profound, irreversible neural deafness. Leo had made peace with his silent universe, finding solace in the visual arts and the stoic, if distant, company of his father. His true anchor was Ilara, the family maid. She had been there since his infancy, a quiet presence of warmth in the cold, marble expanse of the Thorne mansion. Where Alexander provided cutting-edge technology, Ilara provided consistency, a steady hand, a kind smile, the gentle tap on the shoulder to get his attention. She was his interpreter of the household's moods, his bridge to the mundane rhythms others took for granted. One Tuesday, after Leo had complained of a persistent, dull ache deep in his right ear, Ilara insisted on examining it. Alexander was away on another business merger, leaving the house in its usual hushed state. Under the bright lamp of Leo's ensuite bathroom, Ilara, with a nurse's gentle precision learned from caring for her own ailing mother, peered in with an otoscope. Leo watched her reflection in the mirror. He saw her brow, usually smooth, furrow in concentration. Then, her eyes widened almost imperceptibly, a flicker of shock she quickly masked. She gestured for him to stay still. With a pair of slender, sanitized tweezers, she reached in. Leo felt a strange pressure, not painful but profound, as if a cork were being pulled from the very core of his being. After a moment of delicate maneuvering, she withdrew the instrument. Pinched between the tweezer's tips was a tiny, complex object. It was smaller than a pea, a marvel of microfabrication resembling a cybernetic seed or a minuscule metal burr. It glinted under the light, its surface etched with geometric patterns that seemed to dance. Leo took it, his heart hammering against his ribs. He reached for his tablet. "What is this?" He typed. "I don't know," Ilara whispered, her voice sounding strange to him. Not because of its tone, but because he realized he was reading her lips as she spoke. He hadn't needed to look at her mouth for that simple phrase. An ambient hum, previously non-existent, filled the space, the low thrum of the mansion's climate control. He turned his head. The soft swish of his own hair against his collar was a startling symphony. A bird chirped outside the window, a sound he had only ever seen depicted. His breath caught. He looked at Ilara, his eyes wide with terror and wonder. "Leo," she said. And he heard it. Not just saw the shape of his name on her lips, but heard the melody of it, the soft L, the open O, the concern in her pitch. Sound was a tsunami, overwhelming and glorious. He wept, and the sound of his own sob was the most foreign and beautiful thing he had ever experienced. Alexander was summoned home immediately. He arrived, a storm of tailored suit and controlled emotion, and wept joyous tears upon confirming his son could hear. He called it a miracle, a spontaneous neurological awakening. He scheduled press conferences, planned galas in Leo's honor. The reclusive deaf air was a medical marvel. But in the quiet of his now noisy room, Leo studied the object. Under a powerful magnifying glass, on a seemingly smooth section of the metal, he found it, an engraving not of serial numbers, but of a date. September 17, 2012. 12 years prior. The year he turned 4. A year from which he had no memories, only a vague recollection of a long hospitalization for what his father called a severe inner ear infection. The date gnawed at him. He began to research, using his newfound ability to access the world of podcasts, news archives, and phone calls. He searched his father's company, Thorne Tech, for 2012. Buried in old press releases was the announcement of a landmark project, Project Aurelice, a nano-implant designed to cure congenital deafness. The lead researcher was a brilliant young biomedical engineer, Dr. Alastair Finch. The project was abruptly shut down late in 2012, with Thorne Tech citing unforeseen ethical complications and unsustainable side effects. Dr. Finch left the company and, according to a tiny obituary Leo found, died in a car accident 6 months later. Side effects. The phrase chilled him. He confronted his father, holding up the tiny device. Alexander's face, usually an impenetrable mask, paled. "Where did you get that?" he demanded, his voice losing all its celebratory warmth. "It was in my ear." Since 2012, Leo said, his own voice still unfamiliar in his mouth. "You didn't cure me. You did this. You imprisoned me in silence." The story that tumbled out, piecemeal and reluctant, was one of paternal panic taken to a monstrous extreme. Project Aurelius had worked, but too well. The early prototypes in child subjects didn't just restore hearing. They acted as hypersensitive receptors, picking up frequencies that caused crippling sensory overload, pain, and psychological distress. The only way to deactivate the implants without brain damage was a complex, risky procedure. For Leo, at age 4, screaming in agony at a world unbearably loud, Alexander had made a different choice. He had the implant's receiver function disabled, turning it into a sophisticated, inert plug, rendering Leo deaf but safe. Dr. Finch had objected vehemently, arguing it was a violation and that a solution could be found. His accident, Alexander insisted, was just that, an accident. The date was the activation, or rather, the deactivation date. Leo's world shattered again, not into silence, but into a cacophony of betrayal. His entire identity was a lie, a consequence of his father's godlike control. The mansion felt like a prison. The man he respected was a warden. His only sanctuary was Ilara. He found her packing her small suitcase in her quarters. "You knew," he said, the words aching. She turned, her eyes filled with a sorrow decades deep. "Not at first. Not for many years. I was just the maid. But I was there after that hospital stay. You were different. Not just quiet, severed. And your father, he became colder, harder. I started noticing things. Secure files he thought were shredded. A single, encrypted email from Dr. Finch to your father after his supposed death, that I accidentally saw on a screen. It only said, 'The boy is not an experiment. He will remember the silence.' I didn't understand, not fully, until I saw that thing in your ear. I just knew you were hurting, and that your father's story didn't fit." "Why did you stay?" Leo asked. "For you," she said simply. "Someone in this house had to love you without condition. Without a project." The confrontation with Alexander was apocalyptic. Leo, armed with the device, the date, and Ilara's testimony, faced the billionaire. He wasn't seeking money or revenge, he stated with a clarity born of his new, hard-won perception. He wanted the truth, all of it, and his freedom. He threatened to take it all public, the suppressed technology, the fate of Dr. Finch, the intentional deafening of a child. Alexander Thorne, for the first time, looked old and defeated. The empire he built, he realized, was worthless next to the son he had broken to protect. In a tense, silent agreement, Leo did not go to the press. Instead, a substantial, anonymous endowment was made to deaf research and support charities. Ilara was given a generous pension and a small house, far from the Thornes. Leo moved out. He now lives in a modest apartment, learning to navigate a world that is sometimes painfully loud, but always his. He keeps the tiny metal burr on a chain around his neck, a reminder of the silence that was stolen, and the more profound silence of a father's love, which was the greatest deafness of all. He hears music, rain, laughter, and lies with perfect clarity. And in Ilara, who visits every week, he has found the only sound that truly matters, the unwavering frequency of family, chosen not given.